And so that leads me to another question too, because I know you talked about before about this concept, right? Still when we talk about food in the food industry, right? But of course it can be used across the board. But you talk about this concept of like fruit trees versus, I mean, you kind of said it when you kind of got service based versus, you know, something that you're trying to build in the long run. How can you kind of help us to understand how we need to go about getting established and getting revenue into our business with something that's more of a short-term immediate fix in our field and industry, right? Versus those things that are long-term. Because our goal is the long-term goal, but we also need to understand that, okay, I got to figure out a way that in my space, right? Then in my industry, how can I bring revenue in right now to show the profitability so I can get the money to do the things down the line?
Absolutely. And right before I answer that, I want to also say, make sure your credit is good too. So if you, I think there's been people on your show that's done credit repair all along, all while all this is happening. Credit is very important. It's not a deal breaker for CDFI, but it's going to help. So if your credit isn't great, get working on it. And that's also another important piece, because they're going to go over your personal credit history to make sure that you can pay the loan. Just want to emphasize that. But like to your point, your question you just asked. Again, I always say, if you move to a place, it's practically, you and I we're pioneers to a whole new world, right? I like watching sci-fi movies. I know we ain't going to Mars, but I just like the concept of pioneering. These all gonna be taking, we're gonna have a new Earth. But I'm like, if you had to start into a new planet, it's like life just kind of went crazy. And the whole thought is you got to start from nothing, right?
Right.
How would you begin? And so the question, what kind of food would you grow? You know what I mean?
Right.
And so again, there's certain crops, certain plants that, if I had to, again, if I planted a fruit tree, most fruit trees it's a lot of work up front, a lot of time and investment over 3 or 4 years to get that tree nurtured and get it growing. And then about year 4 or 5, it's going to start creating fruit. The good thing about a fruit tree or a nut tree, once you get that thing going, it's going to produce for a lifetime. But there's a lot of fruit. I mean, a lot of work up front before it's going to do. So if I come to the place and I just grow a fruit tree, guess what? I ain't gonna have no food 4 or 5 years. I ain't gonna be around to eat that fruit. So on the flip side, there's vegetables, there's leafy green vegetables, there's potatoes. Potatoes are great. Any kind of root crops. All your greens and your cucumbers and all that kind of stuff grows immediately. Within 6 to 8 weeks, you got produce. Roots is going to give you. Once it grows, it can literally be kept and stored for months. You know what I mean? You can can your vegetables. So all that type of stuff is going to give you immediate return, immediate food, so you can survive while the fruit trees are actually getting stabilized. And that's going to produce. So to your point, what does this parable mean? In business, there are business concepts that take years to build. That take years, a lot of infrastructure, a lot of capital costs to be able to set up. So for me, that's manufacturing. Manufacturing is a very equipment heavy. I need a building. I need a lot of infrastructure. It takes a lot of capital over time to build that system before it's going to start producing for the long haul. So while I'm doing that, I need other revenue sources that's going to give me immediate hits. So for me, a restaurant model is one of the catering concepts for me in my industry. Things that I can do that doesn't take a lot of infrastructure up front. I can literally go and do a farmer's market, next week. And all I need is my little car. I used to do a farmer's market out of my Prius. I ain't lying to you. Put my little thing there, have my little equipment, have my meats, and I go out and start selling. And I can make $1,000 in that day. And it just doesn't take a whole lot to it, right? So again, in your industry, there are things that require a lot of development and work to position. You might be trying to get a government contract, within the industry. That might take a lot of work. You got to get your minority business certification. You got to be able to have all this in place. You got to have these contacts. But then there's smaller contracts that might not generate as much as the government contract, but it's going to keep the lights on. But that's, again, for that LLC model we talked about earlier, that revenue, that trickle, but consistent small revenue model, that's it doesn't take a lot of infrastructure, a lot of time to get. That's going to allow you to be able to have that financial story, so that now you can get the capital to invest into the fruit tree.
Right.
So you got to have models, whatever that is, that can quickly turn. You got to, whatever that service, whatever skill is always in most industries. There's always something that you can do. If you last thing I say, let's say you're an engineer, you want to build something that's pretty significant. But guess what? Most engineers, it might just be you getting a job. guess what? If you got a job, the job is cash that can pay to support the loan. So
Yeah.
So whether it's getting a job or whether you're consulting and utilizing that as a consultant for another company that already has capital, those are ways you still can get money to still build your long-term to be whatever that long-term thing you're trying to do. So that's a strategy that I'm really starting to see. Like I didn't realize it, but I'm getting some funding now. And I have another business where we do like some service-based stuff outside of our manufacturing. And I'm able to get capital with my service-based business. Like it's just like how much you need. Like, okay, I literally got $100,000 2 weeks ago. You know what I mean? And I got it in like 3 weeks. You know, because I was literally had a business model where I generate, over $100,000 a year in the business. We get a profit every year, and it's a small business that's not my primary business, but it always makes money. Always makes money. And when the bank saw it, like my other business, I'm trying to get big equipment and all that. It takes so much more. You know what I mean? This model really became very clear to me. This is my own personal experience of how this works, man. And it's it's really important to understand how money works in this country and how loans and businesses work. Yeah.
No, and that's a good point that you end on. And just to say, it leads me to another question, but just to say the thing that I've learned over the years is that the biggest thing for small business, I had a mom who still runs a dentist office, and the biggest thing for every business is cash flow, because sometimes it's like, the money coming, but it's not coming right now, the money came, but then I needed to come again at this visit. So it's like cash flow is the biggest thing. So if you can first think about how can I establish consistent cash flow in your business, that's what the chef is saying, is that you can do a lot of things from that point, getting that structure in place and then establishing cash flow toward the goal. We just talked about the process, that sometimes you want to snap your finger, you get this big thing, you get this big government contract, but you know what, you got to think about, okay, why would they trust me with this contract, what if I put in place, what if I established to do that? New videos, new podcast episodes every Sunday at 9 o'clock. You can find the full episode by clicking the card up at the top right of this video. If you prefer an audio only experience, then we want to let you know that we're streaming through every major podcast streaming platform. For the full list, you can go to www.lionandthelambo.com. Until next time, go impact the world.